Good morning, friends. Welcome to part 2. Another inspiring experience of Waldo Vieira's. Again, from 1979. Most of them seem to be from then. Not that time matters. I was perfectly aware of being projected when I tranquilly appeared amongst several extra-physical friends of mine. They had all been spiritualists in intraphysical life and were amiably exchanging ideas over tasks on Earth. Some of the more relaxed ones were playing while others were telling intermissive jokes, life between life jokes, or jokes about the intermissive period. And one of the stories related telepathically to an extraphysical consciousness having a full head of grey hair, referred to as the extraphysical beauty parlor. Most consciousnesses go through this beauty parlor when they return to the extraphysical dimension. Is that just sort of getting younger? That's what others say. These are, quote, there are true mummies automatically resuscitated into young bucks in the rejuvenation parlor, end quote. A more experienced extraphysical consciousness mentally told me seriously, quote, you can be sure that projection is a capacity inherent in everyone. It is a reality accessible to anyone with some degree of discipline. The ability to control the projection of the consciousness depends on one's ability to control their own thoughts, judgments, wishes, emotions, motivations, and affinities. Well, that's pretty straightforward. Someone made a comment about the intraphysical team that was preparing to meet with the extraphysical team, in and out of the body, that would accompany persons to the debate beginning the following day in Rio de Janeiro. The debate would bring journalists and spiritualist authors together from all over Brazil under the auspices of the Brazilian Spiritist Federation. That's when spiritualism became all the rage in the 19th century. The Brazilians took to it like ducks to water and called themselves spiritists. And they're still massively embracing it now, more than most other countries. Extraphysical consciousnesses began arriving either before or along with the human speakers at the debate. The brotherly gathering had a cordial extraphysical atmosphere. I was requested to visit a dear friend. I left the gathering with 3 other companions. On the arrival at this other area, also in the intraphysical dimension, we were met with a great deal of fraternal celebration. I guess that's a lot of laughter and backslapping. One extraphysical consciousness who was already there when we arrived referred to the various types of existential programs that were assigned to individuals during their series of intraphysical lives. There are groups that, quote, fly like the eagle, others that, quote, go by the book, still others live to, quote, punch time clocks, and so on. At that point, the extraphysical consciousness W got together with C, B, E, and M and others, some of which were related due to their existential tasks, like stuff you're doing in life, your agenda, your career, your things that you love to do, having been involved in the same mission during intraphysical life. First initials were used at the recommendation of the helpers. In this unrepressed atmosphere, devoid of mysticism or backwardness, I requested, quote-unquote, something that I might be able to take back with me upon return. They all implied that Euripides Barçanufo, my great benefactor since childhood, was present in order to transmit some ideas to me. Concentrating while shoulder to shoulder with me, he expressed his thoughts on evolution in group in more or less the following terms. The withholding of ideas should be observed and considered in relationships with others. We have all been in and will all return to physical life. When we appear in a human family as father, mother, brother, or sister, we need to fraternally accept to live in this family together with the balanced as well as the imbalanced consciousness, the calm as well as the agitated individuals, the studious and also the negligent, the intellectuals and those less brilliant, the easygoing fellows and those who are more difficult to get along with. We are encouraged neither by life nor by nature to shut out those individuals needing the most extra-physical assistance, even though they do not meet up to our standards. On the contrary, these companions are almost always the reason why we are called upon to be reborn into a specific condition. Good point. The natural order of life dictates that we must not exclude these individuals, but rather go forth together with them. The natural order of life? Now there's an assumption. He thinks he knows what the natural order of life is, and he assumes that you're going to agree with him. Now he may be right, but it's a big assumption. Similarly, we find others with whom we have been specifically petitioned to exercise true brotherhood and cooperation. This necessitates that we not cast them out, but instead work to motivate them and foster their greater understanding. For the sake of spiritual truth and fraternal love, it is imperative to join and not divide. No one is reborn to evolve with someone, quote-unquote, by chance. The pathological thoughts of our comrades can reflect on us. No advances in the climb to the top can ever be achieved by taking shortcuts. What's a shortcut? Evolution, whether we like it or not, as well as being an individual process, is also inevitably a group process. Sometimes it is difficult to understand the mechanics of destiny, but it arises, aiming for the improvement of consciousness in group. The process of self-evolution does not allow us to forget individuals who have been left behind. Well, now there's the Bodhisattva bow. The Buddhists who say we're going to stick around until everyone's enlightened. And I say, well, how about just some of them? Have to be all of them? That's a long time. No one is allowed to ascend into the more advanced dimensions carrying memory lapses in the depths of the consciousness. Quote, we evolve together, rising up hand in hand and fly into infinity in flocks, like birds. I attentively tried to record the message. I was told soon to return to the physical, which I did. I woke immediately, recalling the message mentally transmitted by Euripides, which I thanked profusely. Yes. A little observation. One can never be sure what will happen in a projection. Oh, that's true. Nevertheless, there is always a strong correlation between the profile of one's intraphysical life and the events encountered while outside the soma. And that reminds me of something Ledbetter said in Charles Ledbetter, the Theosophist, about, I think it was in the book Invisible Helpers, one of the early books of being, projecting and helping earthbound souls from over 100 years ago. And he said something like, if you're compassionate and kind in the physical body, you will be also that way in the out-of-body state. Those character traits will carry through, and that compassion and kindness for the less fortunate, the earthbound, will precipitate you into being a spirit helper. It's true, it's true, it's true. I feel as though I'm being contacted or invited or, set up with an extraterrestrial biological entity who is close to the planet and has been observing us for quite some quote-unquote time. And I remember, I think Bruce Bowen, maybe even Robert Monroe talked about these beings, the Monroe Institute people, observing us from focus 35. Well, they've got all these focus levels. And because of the Earth changes. the so-called earth changes, which can be, just about anything you want it to be at this point. The embrace of the open conscious embrace of EBEs, the open embrace of other races and religions as brothers and sisters, rather than this, we're closer to God than you, and the embrace of Earth's so-called problems, all the environmental issues and issues of whatever position you take on these environmental issues, just the open embrace that it exists and needs to be dealt with. And of course, that's just the first step. Dealing with it's a whole other story. Are we going to go to the cleaner and now much safer, according to Oliver Stone in his new movie, nuclear power? Are we going to use the 0-point energy devices that we know are stashed somewhere? And are we going to open it up so you can buy one in Walmart? It may seem silly, but that's all part of it. And, are we going to embrace the fact that nature is a sentient being, millions of sentient beings, all of whom have agendas of shepherding growth and decay? The growth of the tree, the decay of the tree, the widening of the river, the subtle shifts in rock structure, in mountains, all that stuff. They're observing those earth changes and feeling like, for the last 50 odd years, that we are graduating to our multidimensional consciousness away from our three-dimensional consciousness. And that, oh my, won't that be interesting to watch? And so this chap, this being has something to say. And I've been sort of tapped on the shoulder so that he can say it. He, she, let's not get gender identified here. Okay, so, sir, madam, you wish to speak? Indeed I do. Yes, very much. It's a great pleasure to be with you and having you be the link to a greater audience. And although perhaps not as great as it could be, and I'm nodding, going, yeah, it could be bigger. And those of us who have been observing your growth on this amazingly unique planet that you have, that is so vibrant and lush with life and water and growth. You have been told how beautiful your planet is, but a lot of you forget because you are so accustomed to the great fecundity of nature's cycles on this planet. We, however, observe it and are amazed compared to some of our home planets, which are not nearly as blessed. Now, of course, I say we, many of us came here to observe, fully aware that you, in your physical lives, were subject to a very limited awareness of what other levels could bring to your consciousness. A lot of your out-of-body experiences were completely unconscious and not in any great way beneficial to you, giving you dreams but not practical experience. whereas we had already gone to that level on our planets and knew about other levels of consciousness and knew that they could be used to our advantage. And you are learning this slowly but surely. There are many who allow their activities to be directed and guided by out-of-body experience, whether it's only semi-conscious or more fuller conscious. More of you and more of you understand that the life you have in your hands is an eternal one with various stages of growth which contribute to the big picture. Some of you also understand that there are stages of decay where it would appear that you regress to simpler and more primitive states. And I can hear some of you are questioning that, and I would add that simpler and more primitive states in your spiritual evolution, going backwards a couple of steps after going forwards for 3 or 4 steps in several lives, also fulfills a purpose. You take your greater knowledge and understanding from lives 27, 28, and 29 onto the more regressed one of 1930 and 31. So you have a more primitive, ego-based being who is pursuing their own agenda in a certain time period and culture rather selfishly, and not recognizing the value of the evolution of family, tribe, group, nation, and making it subject to the evolution of the ego, the benefit of the ego. And in those lives, the experience is to have endless intimations that you're doing the wrong thing and fretting about it even as one pursues one's ruthless agenda. It's an educative experience as those ruthless agendas get chipped away by anxieties and fears, whether it's fear of afterlife punishment or, deity revenge, or it's the simpler, more straightforward understanding that what you can do for others is actually smarter than what you can do for yourself. And as I think WordofGord once said in one of his books moons ago, the best path is the one that benefits the individual and the community at the same time. Perhaps an obvious truth, but when I first read it when I was about 22, I thought, hey, that's pretty cool. I like that. So that's Gordon talking there. That's Gordon slipping into the other person's monologue. So let me return to you, sir, madam. Yes, I am a non-gendered being who is no longer attached to concepts and experiences of male and female and otherwise. I am an energy form in a body that is malleable and changeable and can adapt to many circumstances. My exposure to human Homo sapiens culture, sorry about that, that's Gordon making that mistake, has been fascinating. You do things and experience things much more strangely than we would ever do it. You resist change, and by resisting change, you develop strength. you embrace the passions. And by doing so, you lead yourselves into aggressive warlike situations where you will passionately defend what you value. You will not surrender until surrender is forced upon you. Physically. And to us, this is quite remarkable. We would never do this. But we're watching you do it and seeing, the various experiences that can be brought about by passion. You will defend your young to the death. You will defend your family to the death. You will defend your tribe and your culture and your values to the death. This is something we would not do. We learn to adapt. In your terms, we learn to surrender and give in. And surrendering is perhaps not of the greatest value to many in your species. Surrendering is seen as weakness, as foolishness, as something that has to be avoided at all costs. Pride in oneself and one's achievements seem to be valued more than anything. And although we feel pride is a block to greater consciousness, we understand now, after observing it, that the bruises taken by what we consider excessive pride are in fact educative to you. They seem to form what you call your character. So as you can see from even just a little that I've said, while we attempt to provide inspiration and creative thought to you telepathically, we are also learning from observing you. And there are some of us out here in Focus 35 observing from a distance, as it were, observing from a vibrational distance. There's others of us who have taken incarnation through your method of insemination and fetal growth within the womb. There are others who have morphed themselves into what you call your spirit worlds and are living there with the many millions that reside there either before a birth or after their death. So we know about your spirit worlds and your heavens and your hells and your physical planes. We're learning much, and we take such learning seriously. We do not dismiss what we initially find as your foolish ways. We learn to accept them as your path and not to critique them. Although, some have done so and now regret the lectures they gave the contactees and abductees many decades ago. Levels of regret, of course. We are, although not quite as madly individual as, humans, we do have a sense of individual consciousness, which we surrender for the group consciousness more than you do. But we still have an individuality, although some of us do. Some of the others, and there's a lot of races visiting, not just me and my pals, and many of whom we're almost as ignorant of as we used to be of you. And they are as intrigued with your planet, your people, and your animals, and your consciousness as we are. But they approach it from different angles. And as there's many of them, I cannot claim to know all those angles. I can make a few educated guesses, but I don't know them. And, you know, we have manifested equipment at our disposal that you would call computers, where we can check into all of this. Just as you can go to a fan website and check what some researchers feel is the list of various species visiting Earth, which is, you know, incomplete but growing, we can check a similar database, if you like, and find out a little more about beings from other corners of the multiverse that we are sort of vaguely knowledgeable of, but don't really know. And whether people like myself choose to do that it's an option. It's not a necessity. And we have our preferences and favorites. We have behavior patterns that we're comfortable with and behavior patterns that we're not so comfortable with. We are not perfected beings. We are not minor deities here to instruct. We're here to offer advice, friendly advice. It doesn't extend to instruction, although some of the lesser evolved among us fall into that trap of instruction, of thinking they know it all, of thinking they know more than you. They do know more than you, but emphasizing it doesn't really get them anywhere, at least in my opinion. I don't feel that revealing my source would be of much use to you. It would be a planetary system you're not familiar with, but that is okay. Our forms are malleable, rather strange by your standards, but the intelligence manifested, as you can feel and hear, is not so unusual. We do not, in my culture, where I'm from, make, as you call it, babies. It's more like cloning. And cloning is certainly not a necessity. It's an option, as are many other things. You will have heard stories about races who are cloning because they're dying out. The Greys being a particular example, or what you call the Greys. And I know my friend who's channeling me here has strong views on that. I felt it out before. And he feels very strongly that the heart chakra should never have been bred out, as some races have done, in order to avoid conflict and war and aggression. The passion that the heart chakra represents and exercises is as constructive as it is destructive, and we now recognize that. And until next time, farewell.